Welcome to Community Watch, and today we'll be talking about gerrymandering and redistricting. Please stay with us. Community Watch starts now.
Welcome to Community Watch. Greg, how are you?
Fine, brother, and yourself?
Well, I'm good. I'm feeling really happy to have our guest today because it's a fascinating topic. And it's the kind of topic that you like since you are a political animal.
You have jokes today, huh?
No, that is absolutely true. You are.
I don't know about that, but I find politics very interesting.
Yeah. Well, today we are talking about redistricting and gerrymandering. So both terms with multiple syllables. So that'll be challenging for us, but we can handle it. And our guests today are Lucy Hale, has been with us in the past. She is the president of the League of Women Voters for Rome and Floyd County. And we also have with us Janet Grant, who is the VP of an organization called Fair Districts Georgia. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Really happy to be here.
Well, great. I know today we are talking about redistricting and gerrymandering, which is a fun word to say, but it's not really a great concept, but it's a fun thing to say. But I want to talk a little bit about redistricting generally to get us started. So, and I don't know, I'll let y'all decide who will carry us forward, or you could share duties here. But for folks that don't really understand the concept of redistricting, what is that exactly, and when is it supposed to happen?
I'd like to defer to Janet Grant because we are just in the League of Women Voters delighted that she agreed to do this. I want to say that she has decades of experience in health as a healthcare executive with governmental affairs and policy, and she has been good enough in recent retirement to direct that experience to voter education, focusing on redistricting. And she is the vice chair of Redistricts Georgia, Fair Districts Georgia, which is a nonpartisan partner with the Nonpartisan League of Women Voters. So Janet, thank you so much for relieving me of the responsibility to being as smart as you are.
Thank you, Lucy. That was a very generous introduction. So I really am very happy to be here and to talk about redistricting because, as you said, Dr. Hershey, this is the year for redistricting. What redistricting refers to is what sounds like a very kind of boring topic, and that is where we redraw the lines of our political districts. And it happens at least every 10 years after the census. And so we had the census completed in 2020. And so 2021 is the year that really governmental entities at all levels will be redrawing their lines. And we expect that to happen here in Georgia later this year. Because of the delay of the census, that timeline is going to be a little bit different this year than it has been in the past. We just received our apportionment numbers. All the states across the country received our apportionment numbers from the census, and that's essentially our total population count. And here in Georgia, we had an increase of over 1 million residents in our population. But we still are only going to have 14 congressional districts. So that information we just learned here at the end of April. And then at the end of September, we'll get the detailed information. The census will release that will allow the actual redistricting, drawing of the new lines to happen. And typically that would have, we would have had maps probably out for review sometime in the summer, and the legislature would have approved those in August. So we're on a different timeline this year because of that census delay.
Well, let me ask you first, since the population of the state is up by 1 million according to the census, why does that not lead us to the creation of a new district? Why do we still have 14?
Yeah, we had hoped possibly, although there were a lot of experts out there that were saying that we probably would not increase by that, by another seat. But that did, it's in comparison to all the rest of the states across the country, and we didn't grow as much as some other states did. And so other states are getting additional districts, and some states shrunk, in particular in kind of the Midwestern, the Iron Belt, I think they call it. Some of those states like Michigan and Ohio are going to be losing seats, and states like Florida and Texas that grew even more than Georgia are going to be gaining.
All right, so it's a comparison nationally.
Yes.
And the fact that the census had some, at least timeline issues, I don't guess I know there's some concern about whether the census was an accurate one, but I guess that's true almost with every census.
That is true. It's really a point in time. And so it's only as accurate as, what it looked like on that April 1st date. That's the census date. This year, because of the pandemic and the issues with being able to get out and really try to supplement the census with getting out in neighborhoods and meeting people. All of that was much more challenging in this round. So as you said, there have been some concerns about the quality of the census, and that is another reason for the delayed timeline, because they're taking extra time in order to really evaluate all of that data prior to release. Some of the information that has come out from some of the experts since the apportionment numbers were released at the end of April, one of the concerns definitely has been that the Hispanic population looks to be undercounted. Mm-hmm. For instance, the states like Texas and Florida, where there was actually a prediction that they might gain even more seats than what they did. And the thinking is that because the Hispanic population appears to have been undercounted, that wasn't reflected.
Well, I know that we want to talk about the process of redistricting and the as what is called gerrymandering, because to look at our current district map, it looks like a crazy person created it. There are some counties that are chopped in half, or it just looks like there's no logic to it, but there is kind of a logic to it. Mm-hmm. Which I guess brings us to gerrymandering.
Right. Yeah. Gerrymandering gets its name from Eldridge Gerry, who was the governor of Massachusetts. He was also one of our first vice presidents, but he's really not known for that. He is known for drawing some districts in Massachusetts that looked like a salamander. And therefore the name of gerrymandering came from that example. And so going back really to the founding of our country, we have seen what we would call partisan gerrymandering happen, where a party that is in political power and has the ability to draw those maps, draws them to their party's favor. So they may, draw lines so that they are have partisan advantage when it comes to that next election.
Well, I know y'all have brought us a little video to explain this, so maybe this is a good time to show that video.
Partisan redistricting, or gerrymandering, is about fractions, percentages. These coins represent voters in an evenly divided state, 50 dimes, 50 pennies. These 100 coins elect 10 representatives. That means each voting district must contain 10 coins. Now, real people don't live in neat rows, so let's mix them up. Okay, this is our hypothetical evenly divided state. Let's see what happens if the dimes draw the maps, 10 coins in each district. For the dimes, first thing we do is pack the pennies, give them 2 safe districts, but pack them solid. The remaining 8 districts are won by the dimes, by smaller but still comfortable margins. The dimes win 8 districts and the pennies win 2. The dimes overwhelmingly control the legislature. Of course, if the pennies drew the district lines, the opposite would be true. Let's rig it for the pennies. For the pennies, we follow the same pack and crack strategy. Pack the dimes into 2 safe districts and crack the remaining 8 districts to win by the same margin, 8-2. Well, now that we've destroyed democracy, let's consider what this map would look like if the districts were drawn for compactness and keeping communities of interest together. You get evenly divided districts in an evenly divided state. Some go heavily dime, some go penny, but that's to be expected. People live where they live, and that is what democracy is about. It's not about party bosses rigging election districts so they can fix the election results.
All right, thank you for that video, the pennies and dimes video explaining gerrymandering. So, Greg, I know that you have a bunch of questions, but I just wonder if this is, of all of the political issues that I know you think about, is this one that you have concerns about? And that's because we haven't really ever talked about this.
It's a yes and no answer for me, actually. And I know we don't have much time in this segment, but when we come back, Ms. Grant, I'm just wondering, is the whole process, the way it's laid out, if it's just not flawed from a legislative standpoint? Because each party has done it. And so I'm just wondering if the whole process is just not flawed as it relates to drawing district lines. And so to me, that's part of the problem. I just think, why wouldn't you draw lines in your favor? And it seems like parties keep doing that. But I know we're coming up on a quick break, Doc. When we come back, I do have some concerns about the whole process.
All right, we need to stop here just for a break, and we'll be back with much more. So don't go away.
For 50 years, Georgia Highlands College has been a community that takes charge. At GHC, we have a mission to provide access to an outstanding education, meeting the career needs of the region, and helping our communities thrive. Every student we graduate becomes a celebration we never forget. We are more than Chargers. We are Chargers taking charge for 50 years and beyond.
Welcome back to Community Watch, and we are in the middle of a conversation with Janet Grant, who is the VP of Fair Districts Georgia, and Lucy Hale, the president of the League of Women Voters for Rome and Floyd County. And we have just started a conversation on gerrymandering, which has a long history. And Greg, you were about to ask questions.
Yeah. Well, actually, I was thinking about it, and I've been thinking about this for a moment. As an African American, for the most part, we've never really had an advantage, especially in states like Georgia. So when you ask me, am I concerned about it? It's a yes and no, because there's nothing we really can do about it when we don't have, when the legislature draw the lines are drawn. And being that we are very partisan right now, so my thinking is it's something we need to be aware of, but I'm more concerned about making sure people do vote and get out to vote, even though districts are packed. Because once the lines are drawn, you're pretty much stuck with that for the next 10 years. But I do think raising the awareness, but honestly, when you look at the history of it, it just seems like every party has been willing to do it. And I don't know if we have the temperament or the desire for any one party to stand up and say, hey, let's be really fair about this. So that's my biggest thing, is that I don't know that either party in this two-party system is willing to ever say, let's just be fair and even. So I think the whole process is flawed, to be honest.
So
I just wonder if Janet could talk a little bit about that, because I will speak for the League of Women Voters nationally, and we do recommend that there be the new procedure of using public policy commissions or some other way to avoid having the political party in power have pretty much hold all the cards to redistricting. There are states that have done that, and I think Janet can tell us more about that.
Yeah, thanks, Lucy. And that's exactly where I was going to go as well, is that, as Greg said, both parties do this. And we've had that history here in Georgia. The Democrats did a gerrymander back in 2000 that was thrown out of by the courts. And then the Republicans did a very significant gerrymander in the 2010 census in 2011 as well. So we've seen it here in Georgia and across the country. We've got states right now with Democratic control that you can see them planning a gerrymander, and then states like Georgia where the Republicans are in control. Georgia has been identified as one of the states that is most at risk for a partisan gerrymander based on a number of national organizations that make that kind of assessment. So many states have gone to independent redistricting commissions that are filled by non-political appointees, and they purposely set up the composition to be including both Democrats, Republicans, and independents. And then those commissions are charged with getting public input and really understanding what the communities of interest are in their state, and drawing nonpartisan kinds of lines. So we have seen that to be of increasing interest across the country. States that have the ability to do citizen initiative amendments, constitutional amendments, have increasingly been getting these on the ballot, and almost always they pass. Because if you look at polling around redistricting, this is one place where you can really say that there is consistent feelings on both sides of the aisle. Democratic voters and Republican voters and independent voters all believe that gerrymandering shouldn't happen, and they want to see a more independent process. So we do not have the ability to do a citizen initiative here in Georgia, but we have seen introduction of legislation in the current session to also put in place an independent redistricting commission here in Georgia.
So Ms. Grant, I know you got some questions, Doc, but Ms. Grant, let me ask you this. So what can citizens who are concerned about gerrymandering now and coming up, what can be done now?
So there's a number of things that citizens can do. First of all, learn more about this. We have a website, Fair Districts Georgia, or GA.org, that has a lot of information about redistricting and gerrymandering. Learn about it, learn about what your district lines look like. Get prepared for the public process that's going to be happening. There will be public hearings across the state feeding into this process as the legislature moves through the process. And the best thing we can do is have citizens get engaged and as one of our legislator friends says, be loud. We had a year or two ago, there was legislation submitted that was going to do a mid-cycle redistricting. In other words, have legislators kind of trade voters, trade lines in between their districts to make them each more safe. And we had 200 people that showed up at that hearing, and they were shamed into essentially withdrawing that legislation. And we haven't seen any like legislation now in the last couple of years. So really getting involved and making your opinion known is the very best thing that you can do.
Well, let me see if I understand. In order to change the process in Georgia, something would have to be on the ballot,
right,
for a vote to make these changes. And in order to get on the ballot, it would have to be approved by the legislature?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, Georgia is, many states have the ability for citizens to essentially petition and get signatures to put something on the ballot. In Georgia, it has to be passed by the legislature, 2/3 of the legislature first.
So my question is, even though I would truly love to see this happen, we would have to have a legislature that is willing to risk the benefits of gerrymandering to do something that's fair and right.
Yes, that's the challenge. I think the opportunity in Georgia is, as we've seen in this last election, Georgia really is becoming a swing state. And, from our perspective, when one party sees that, that there might be a change in terms of who the majority is an opportunity for a conversation on both sides of the aisle to make a more fair process. And a really good example of that is the state of Virginia. Virginia just went through kind of a flipping of their political majority. And in that process, they passed legislation to set up an independent commission. It went on the ballot in this last November and was passed overwhelmingly by the voters. So in Virginia, they literally right now today are setting up their first independent redistricting commission.
So what you're saying is that since in the recent election here in Georgia, it looks like things are we're going through some changes in Georgia. Mm-hmm. We had some Democratic victories that suggest perhaps the Republican majority might not be quite as strong. And so this is a time perhaps when both parties would be interested in considering a change.
Right. And that's what we're hoping for. This year, we're really focused on the process and trying to get as fair maps as we can out of the process this year. Next year, we'll be back to that conversation about, trying to get both parties on board with making those kind of changes for the more long-term reform that we need.
Janet, I wonder if you could say a little bit about how this redistricting will lack some of the safeguards from the Supreme Court that earlier redistricting might have benefited from, and how that might mean that people knowing about redistricting locally and attending public hearings where they complain if it looks like gerrymandering is being attempted, why that's really more important this year.
Yes, and thank you for bringing that up, Lucy. There's really two things that happened in the Supreme Court that put us at a more challenging position this year. One is that the Supreme Court heard a number of cases around partisan gerrymandering and really kind of kicked the can, as I would call it, in their decisions, and basically said that that it really wasn't in the sphere at a federal court level to address gerrymandering. And they really said that's going to be up to state courts to take action. So we don't have that Supreme Court avenue any longer to address partisan gerrymandering. Racial gerrymandering is still within that purview. And it's sometimes hard to untangle, what is partisan versus what are racial gerrymandering. The other Supreme Court decision that was the Shelby County decision in 2013 removed the pre-clearance review of the Department of Justice of redistricting maps. And that was a part of the Voting Rights Act that the Supreme Court said that we didn't need any longer. And so this will be the first redistricting cycle here in Georgia and across the country where there will not be pre-clearance review by the Department of Justice of those maps.
So when I look at the map of Georgia, the redistricting map, some districts are much bigger than others. Is there a certain percentage or a number of people that have to be within a district? Because some are very small, but I'm thinking it could be very dense though. And then some are just very large.
And that's really the reason that redistricting has to happen at least every 10 years is because people move around. And so the idea is that each district should have the same number of voters so that it really is one person, one vote. And so here, because of the fact that we have 1 million more people in Georgia, there will be an increase. Our congressional districts, each congressional district will be 765,000 people. Each state Senate district is 191,000, and each state House district will be 59,000. Those are all up because of the fact that that we have more population, but lines will need to be redrawn, and obviously people have moved. We see more people moving into urban areas, less people in rural areas. So some of those rural districts may look a lot bigger in terms of on the map, but will be the same size as some of those very small, maybe more metro districts.
Well, we are in our last minute here. So first of all, I want to thank you both for coming and explaining a fairly complex situation. But I know that folks may want to learn more about it. And I'm guessing your website for Fair Districts Georgia would be a good place.
Yes. And we have a lot of other resources and links to other information. So it's fairdistrictsga.org.
And the League of Women Voters in Rome is providing district maps, laminated, and information packets to all of the libraries, public and the college libraries. It should be, your reference librarian should have that.
All right. Well, we are out of time, and I appreciate you both for being here. Thank you for being with us on Community Watch. And thank all of you for watching, and we'll see you next time on Community Watch.